All right, let's jump into our conversation.
Woo!
We're continuing our series called Changing Our Vocal Perspective, which is where we talk about how one voice is changing what we think we know to be true about singing. And today we're going to be talking about, Michael, the TEDx you did at Texas State University. So for those of us who haven't seen it, will you just give us a quick recap of what you talk about in that TEDx video?
Gladly, yeah. The whole purpose and point of the talk was to talk about questions and how we should continue to challenge ourselves to keep asking questions, even when people might shame us for asking questions, and not being afraid to do so.
When did this start for you, this idea of asking questions?
Probably annoyingly my entire life for people who have been around me. I was the kid who asked why about everything. I mean, quite literally. And it's now that I have a niece, I understand it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why again? I don't know, just because. I've really challenged myself not to say just because people told me because when I was a kid. And I always felt kind of dismissive of what I thought. And even though it's funny, because even now, as I'm older, you think about it, you're like, oh, they're just a kid. Like, they're not even going to get that. But you do as a kid. You continue to wonder, and you're like, why is that? How come? It's quite lovely. So I've held very true to that for a long time. And back in high school when I was a kid, I was asking questions. How come my voice does this? Why does it do this? And at the time, it was almost as if people had given me the end of a road very quickly. How come this? Well, that's just because that's just the way it is. Oh, what? And I think that's just the way it is something that I still in my life often challenge, simply because I think it is the way it is right now, because we don't have any other knowledge to go beyond that. And so once we learn how to go beyond what is right now, it will be what is until it isn't.
When did asking questions become part of One Voice's culture?
I think that questioning, for those voicers out there, you probably very much connect with this, in that questions are just part of what we do. If you've been in a One Voice masterclass or you've talked to us about One Voice before, you probably catch on to the idea that we ask a lot of questions. And I think that's because from the very beginning with One Voice, it was built into the very DNA of One Voice, because I couldn't stop asking questions. And even now, the idea is that we continue to ask questions, not to find what is right. For those of you who haven't seen it, pop back and take a look at the right way. One Voice live episode that we did, super cool. We're not looking for the right way, as it were. We're just looking for what makes sense. And so we're going to continue to ask questions over and over and over, even if it means it disproves or pushes aside our very own theories that we've come up with and established all these things with. They're not precious, and I don't think it is helpful for us to keep them as precious. I think we need to continue to challenge them and ask questions, because if something is worth keeping, it will make its way through the fire, as it were. It will land on the other side. And I think sometimes we are afraid of that. We're afraid of feeling the burn from someone proving our idea or a theory incomplete or incompatible or unnecessary. And I think that can be very terrifying if we're holding on to it and calling it right. For example, the coordinations theory, weight theory, resonance points theory, all these things are theories, and until we figure out other information that would disprove them or change them in any way, we're going to continue to understand them. And as people challenge those ideas, it will only help to refine the clarity of those particular theories, if in fact they remain true or stand the test of time, moving forward.
Can you give a few examples of what it looks like in our culture to ask questions when it comes to singing?
Yeah. I mean, this is a classic. It's everywhere. Yeah, I just, really want to sing this song. Well, you are an alto, and, this is what it is. You're just an alto, and some people are just born an alto, Yeah, but how, why? Well, it's, we just are, and that happens all the time. And so then people say, but do you think I could get better? Do you think I could actually sing those notes someday? Do you think I could actually sing like that? No, probably not. We just are what we are. And, saying that out loud, as I give that example, if someone were to to go a little bit further with that and push even more and say, I think maybe there is. People would you then start getting the pushback of people saying, particularly if you have a community of singers with you who have been studying with you for a while, perhaps in like a school program or something like that, you'll have people say things like, well, I don't think that makes any sense. I think that you're stupid for this. You're just going to waste time. Who are you? This is my favorite. Who are you to ask a question like that? What? Have you gone to school at all for this? Have you studied this? Have you researched this? God, I'll never forget this. It was I was on tour and I met a singer who was my age, and I was young at the time. I was in my early 20s, and I was asking her. I said, "Yeah, I just don't. I think that maybe there's more to the voice, and that maybe it's possible to do these other things, or whatever." And she's like, Who are you to say that? Like, I mean, did you train for this? Did you like go to school for this or anything?" And I was like, "No, I haven't. She was like, I was like, whoa.
Whoa, verbatim. She said, "Who are you?"
Who are you? It was awesome. And so, man, that was such a blow. It was such a blow. And I was like, there's something itching at me about this that doesn't quite line up for me yet. And even though for a lot of people, for most of us, we just accept what's there. And that's not a bad thing always. I think it's a real thing. I think we would all love to say that we only vet everything we believe, and we always take the time to understand every single thing that we believe. No, we don't. Think about some of the food you eat. Think about the people you hang out with. Think about the stores you go to. Think about places you support without even knowing, right? Yeah. You just accept and you do that because we quite literally can't find an answer or challenge every single thing in our worlds because we'd never progress. There's just quite literally too much. But I think what we end up doing is we end up taking on a particular gauntlet and we go towards it. We find a challenge, something that itches with us, something that seems like doesn't make sense to us for some reason, or we're unwilling to accept it. And I think we have to be open to ridicule. I think we have to be open to people disagreeing with us. And I think that's okay. I think for those of you in places like this in your lives, I would recommend to you continue to stay strong in what you believe, but also not look to be right. If any of you have ever been in a relationship before, you probably have had fights with people where the fight becomes not about listening to what each other wants, needs, feels, but instead it becomes a fight of who's right and who's wrong. The funny thing is that once you find out who was right in the conversation ends except no one's happy. And so I think finding that out and understanding that we're not in an aim, and this is part of our culture, is that we want to keep open minds. We're not in a game. The game is not about being right. It's about finding what makes sense. And so if something ends up happening where we learn something new and we say, oh, wow, well, that really does make so much more sense, and it answers all these questions. And if I ridicule it against all these other things or test it with all these other questions, it seems to actually fit even better than what I was thinking before. But that takes a level of awareness and maturity, I think, with what you believe and think to do that. But in the beginning stages of having something that itches on you or in your brain, you will have ridicule because you're going to want to share it with other people. And when you do share it with other people, people are like, I don't really know. I mean, like, again, who are you? Do you have any degree? Do you have any of this? No, well, I don't. Wow, that's ridiculous. How can you think that you would have anything to offer beyond what these scientists have been researching for years, right? Yeah, I don't know. And I think the thing is most of the time we are confined by our perspective. And so because we are confined by our perspective and the way we see the world is how we're going to then interact with that world, I think we have to be open to the idea that our perspective on the world, if shifted, could give us a whole new way of seeing something, a whole new way of interacting with it. And I think that doesn't always come from the people who are doing the hours of research every day and are in the field all the time. That just doesn't always happen. It's why you see in movies and in moments in your own lives where we have people who say something that suddenly spark this whole, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. Now your mind's exploding and you're asking all these questions about, oh my gosh, so if this, then this, then this, then this.
Do you ever catch yourself getting lazy or forgetting to continue digging? The reason I ask this is because I feel that the more we learn and the more that I feel personally, the more that I feel solid in, the easier it is to forget or slip back into taking things for granted. And I have to remind myself sometimes, keep asking questions, keep on it. Do you ever find yourself getting lazy or losing the question mindset?
Yes, speaking for myself, I think more of it comes from being tired.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a lot of things, I just kind of get burnt out, like, oh, I've got to ask another question. I mean, today we live in a time where we are actually inundated with opportunities to learn about things that we are passionate about. It's very exciting. There wasn't anything easily accessible about food, what kind of food we eat. Now you can go on Netflix and on different media outlets and find all kinds of information on food. You can find all kinds of information on politics and policies. You can find all kinds of information on, you name it, whatever rights or laws you want to know about. You can probably find tons of videos, possibly even documentaries about them, which is very exciting. But I think there comes a time when there is information overload for us, and we can't continue to vet and process everything. And so I think in that moment, I've learned to give myself the permission to limit some of that information, that I've been able to say, like, all right, you know what? This is huge. I would love to know more about this, but right now I don't have the energy or mental real estate to allocate towards this right now. So I'm going to leave this right now on the side. And when I have time and my heart is diving, my brain is diving in for this, wanting it, craving it, I'm going to then pick that up and take a look at it. But it takes patience, and it takes, I think, a moment to say, I can't answer this right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I like that. What would happen if coordinations theory was disputed?
It has been disputed many a times, but disproved it has not. And so I'm assuming you're asking about
disproved, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to both of those things, because I think the TEDx Talk was a terrifying endeavor initially. At first, I was asked to do it, and I was super pumped. I was like, oh my gosh, bucket list. I'm gonna be able to give a TEDx Talk. This is incredible. And everyone had always been telling me, of course, they're like, you should give a TEDx Talk. This is something, you have to do this. Gosh, you would be perfect. You're the person to give this kind of. I was like, oh yeah, I'd love it. And then finally it happens, and here I am, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna do? You have a coach, someone who works with you on everything. So you come up with the idea, you put it all together, and then they listen to you, or they read it, the outline of it, or whatever you've written. And they're like, well, that is not as clear. Make sure that that's clear. You have too many thoughts here, or whatever. So they help you kind of distill your ideas, which is really cool. Now, going into this whole endeavor, as I started to come up with the whole talk and my points, utilizing the coordinations theory as my muse, if you will, to talk about questions, I got terrified. I got terrified. It was one of the first moments that I realized that I was going to put out this idea of the coordinations theory that would be open to the world. Previous to that, I had only shared it in master classes and things like that, where I would have time to further explain the idea. Mm-hmm. But now I wasn't going to have all that time to explain that idea. I wasn't going to have 4 hours, to really help people understand all the ins and outs of it all, and why it all makes sense, etc. And that was really hard for me to distill it into such a small amount of time. I mean, I talk about coordinations theory and questioning in, I think it's 16 or 17 minutes was the length of the talk, and that was unbelievable for me. And because you teach master classes, so like distilling that into that little bit of time, just that theory alone is very difficult. But what it did is it made me fearful about dispute initially. I was really scared, honestly. I was afraid of what people would do. I was afraid of what people would say. And then I kind of turned this corner that was incredible. I had this moment where suddenly I was like, all right, you know what? I am interested in this next phase of the process. And the process that One Voice is in right now is exposure. And that's where we are. We're in the process of exposure. And the TEDx Talk was a huge step in the exposure world for me with this idea, with the theories in particular. And that for me was like overwhelming and exciting. And when I turned that corner, I said, you know what? I'm interested in seeing what people have to say. I'm interested now in what the disputing and all of that will bring. And potentially this could also bring disproving. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for.
Got it.
It could also bring that as well. And as I went through that, my initial response was, oh no. If someone disproves the coordination theory, it's all over. And what I realized is that what we had built into our very culture was questioning. And that was the whole point. That, it's not the coordinations theory that makes one voice. It's not the weight theory. It's not the resonance point theory. It's not that. It's the people. It's our discussions. It's our way of thinking and continuing to challenge what we know, to find out more, to understand more. That it might just be on the other side of that line. If we can just allow ourselves to cross that line and look over and just peek over the edge, we might just find more. And I think it's that pursuit, that relentless pursuit, and that tireless pursuit of questioning that will enable us to continue forward. And when we get burned out, I think it's okay to take a break. And I think it's okay to pump the brakes and pause for just a moment. And then get back on the horse and keep riding forward. And so, yeah, I think if someone did disprove the coordinations theory, I think it would be difficult initially because of the language that we've developed through that, the tools, etc. And so what should happen if it is disproved at any point is that then whatever it's disproved by should very quickly answer all of those questions for us, which will be very exciting. And that's what we're talking about right now, is what the coordinations theory has done for the entire world of singing, as you and I and all you one voicers out there know it. It's completely changed how we interact with, look at, rehabilitate, build the voice. And that's huge. That's huge. All those questions that we've had in our journeys as vocalists, suddenly we have answers for. That's unbelievable. So yeah, it may be that at some point that changes for us, and there's another thing, and how exciting that will be. My hope is that we'll be on the front edge of that because we're continuing to ask questions.
If it's disproved, that means we have new answers, which will
Yes.
lead to new questions, and that's great. And
Yes.
that's what it's about. This is going to be my last question for you. What advice do you have for newbies to the question game? What kind of questions do you recommend? What mindset could they be in? What do you have to offer them?
It's a great question. I mean, I can give you an inspirational speech about how we should forever have questions and da-da-da-da. But I think we have to be real about it, real with ourselves about questioning. You know, you asked the question earlier, about, getting tired, and that it is tireless and it is relentless because it's hard. It is hard work asking questions because it means you don't always get answers. Just because you ask a question doesn't mean you're going to find an answer or even receive an answer. Sometimes it's the cost of digging. Sometimes it's the cost of searching. I think if you're like us, you value what makes sense more than you do just being comfortable. But I do think that along that journey of asking questions, we have to be kind to ourselves. And we have to be kind, and we also have to be realistic, and we also have to be protective. So I'm gonna talk about those things together. The protective part is recognizing that there's something that itches for you, and before you perhaps share that itch with other people, and you might want to protect it for a little while and see if you can't gather some data first. People will ridicule it. They'll try and tear it down because it challenges what they believe or think. They're going to try and justify what they believe or think as quickly as possible. And so I think in that way you have to protect it. I think you have to be realistic with yourself about whether or not what you're doing is delusional. If you're just holding on to it, and there may be an itch, but you know by everything around you that you're told or that you see that it doesn't make any sense, that you allow yourself to be realistic, and it may be that itch is still there, but that you recognize how that itch may be affecting the world around you. And it may mean that it's not right for the circle that you're in at that moment. Perhaps you can do it in another circle, or perhaps you'll have to go at it alone. And lastly, that you take care of self and you make sure that you are kind and generous to yourself, that you need rest from this stuff. You can't be constantly searching. You will burn yourself out, and then you'll lose steam, and then you'll lose focus, and then it was all for nothing. And what a shame. And so I think you have to be kind to yourself, be patient. I think those would be my three. I think it would be kind to yourself, be realistic, and be protective of those things as you question, and particularly as you question things that maybe there aren't immediate answers to. Those are very difficult. And I've now done this a couple times in my life. And after doing One Voice, it was kind of, after starting that whole process, it was amazing. I found myself a completely different idea, not about singing. It was an itch again. I was like, oh my gosh, I know this itch. I know this. I felt this before. What is this? And I realized very quickly, I was like, I shared it with a few people, and they're like, what? I don't know. And I couldn't really defend it because I didn't have enough information yet. And I couldn't take what they were giving me and utilize it as helpful information. It was just like a tiny little flame, and if you blew on it, it would just blow out. And so I realized I had to keep it for a little bit until I could grow it and understand. And as you grow it, as you try and gain more information, understanding about the question that you may have, what you'll find is either the fire will grow or it will just dissipate. And that's okay, because that means you found an answer, which is that what you're pursuing is not the answer. You know,
Right.
I think that's what I had to share.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. This is such a huge and important part of One Voice in our culture, and our students know we're constantly questioning them all the time, whether or not they like it.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, next week I will be joined again by Michael Maresca, and we're going to be talking about talent. So we will see you same time, same place, Wednesday, 1:30 CT next week. And don't forget to submit your questions to questions.singonevoice.com, questions and audio clips. Thanks, you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and catch the full thing, the full edited version on YouTube. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.